Hello there, this is Hans Forschner with Napkin Engineering Network. In this video I will go over a simple indoor project example which uses variance and to define different noise sources, enclosures, mitigation factors, or mitigation measures. I'm getting started showing an existing room with a control room, a separate machine room. We'll discuss organization of the indoor editor, how to group objects, sort them, how to define variance. So let's get started. So here we have the manufacturing this project, and we open up the geodatabase. Again, that's where all the geometry, the sources are defined. So I open this up. We have a couple of situations. The situation I'm looking for is the third one. It's called the indoor model, and it only has one geofile in there, which is my industrial building that defines that interior room. So I'll open this up, either double clicking on that or clicking on open. Up. All right. So here it automatically auto scales to the building. So we have the blue line set up here. So let's open up this this object, this industrial building. Again, here you can highlight the building. You can show the coordinates and the input direction. So this is counterclockwise, the coordinates. And it doesn't really matter which coordinate you go to. You go to any of the corners with your mouse, and you left click on a coordinate to open up that industrial building. So this is again the very typical view of the industrial building and the editor. So again, from the top, the two tabs, the general property tab and the editor. So here again we get the overall dimensions. So this is about 40 by 20 meters in length, actually 50 by 20, and we have a total room height of 12 meters. Nothing really much else is defined right here for the moment. And then we have here the different views. So this is a plan view, and then here we have a 3D view. To rotate and up and down, changing that, you hold down the control button and you move your mouse, your left mouse, push it down and then move up and down. As you can see at the top right corner, there is a little north arrow that gives you kind of an indication of what from where you're looking at. All right, so let's go to the editor. So here again on the left hand side we have the different objects. So we have the ground floor object. So this is when you have the indoor module, indoor calculation module in SoundPLAN, you are getting the ground floor. Otherwise you would just see the facade and the whatever number of facades you have in the roof. In that case, if you don't have the indoor module, then you can basically just define the sources on the outside for your exterior model. So in this case we actually can define or develop an interior model. We see the objects or the building, the floor plan right here. So let me zoom in over a little bit. We can increase, decrease this view here. We can also decouple this 3D view. If you are running out of real estate with your screen, you can decouple that, and then you have this 3D view that you can move to your other screen, for example. In this case, I'll couple it back in. So we have the two views, the plan view or side views, and then here the 3D view. All right. Up here in the top, we see the different objects from point, line, area source, machine, which is basically a box. And then we have absorption areas. We have horizontal and vertical objects and tilted objects. So that could be a tilted surface that you can define in terms of transmission or the absorption. Then in terms of receivers, we have point receivers. We have a measurement path, cross-section receivers, or an area receivers. And then you have geometry text. So that's for more documentation purposes. All right. So here, first of all, let me take a look at this model here and discuss the organization that we have here on the ground floor. So as we add additional objects inside this on this ground floor, you can see that it added anything that is inside that room. So we have, for example, a control room desk right here. We have a control room. We have different cabinets inside that room. We don't really see the cabinets right now because the control room is going over the cabinets. Then we have a machine room with a wall, some sources, some pumps, and then here also some enclosures. And now here what's interesting is they are grayed out. And they are grayed out because right now we are looking at the variant 0. So that's the default variant. And I have a variant 1 with enclosures. If when I select that, then it turns on the objects that are part of the variant 1. All right. So if I zoom out and I go to any of these enclosures and I look in the description down here, the enclosures has a check mark for variant 1 with enclosure. So this is kind of like how you turn on and turn off objects, and that could be again walls, or like vertical, horizontal walls. It could also be sources or absorptive surfaces. And for each of those we can define if the source is on for variant 1, variant 0, or the default variant. And with that you can organize different scenarios that you want to create, and that could be affecting the sources inside the room or the room geometry in terms of absorption on the walls, on the ceiling, or in terms of walls that you put in there where the sound cannot kind of transfer from one space into another. So let's maybe take another look at this control room, and up here we have certain controls here, and one is show object until a certain height. So I'll select that, and right now it shows all the objects within 6 meters. So if I cut that down to, let's say, 3 meters, then I slice into that, and then here we can now see for this enclosure that we can see into the machine room now, or in this enclosure. And then here in the control room we can see, there are some cabinets in here, and there's a big desk, probably some monitors around that, so that we can look into the room. All right. Okay. Again, in terms of visualizing what you have, you can rotate the whole thing and take a look at that. Depending on the rotation, the walls from the front, they disappear, so you can actually look into the room. All right. We can also zoom in. All right. So here we can see there is a door into the control room. Looks like there is also a window right here with some sort of a different transmission loss probably. And then we have these enclosures. Like here, this enclosure that has one door that is open, and the other enclosure I think has multiple doors here, and they seem to be closed. With these doors, there is probably different transmission losses defined. All right. Okay. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about organizing this information that we have here. As you can see, we have different groups. So if we define these enclosures, we can define an enclosure, for example, with a vertical object, and we'll just open up a box from top left to bottom right and release it. And then here we can define, okay, I want the enclosure. It starts at whatever elevation, in this case on the ground level. I can go to a height of maybe 2.5 meters, and I create it as a body. And as a body basically means it defines the walls and a ceiling. So it automatically puts a entire enclosure over whatever is included inside that area. So let me click on the check mark, and then here you can see that it created a little box in here. So this is how I created these two enclosures that we have around these sources. So let me, and then here we can see this is how the program organizes. In this case, this would be a sample enclosure. All right. So as we type in the name, it automatically names all the ceiling and all the walls of this. Now here it automatically took over the assignment from the variant from the last enclosure, which is variant 0 and variant 1. So variant 1 is checked, variant 0 is unchecked. So this will be only considered for the variant 1 with enclosure calculation. Now here, so this is the general group name, and then here we can go in. So this is the ceiling. You get the geometry. We can again assign that to each of the walls, and again we can define if that wall is active or not active. Then in terms of material properties, we can define the transmission loss, we can define the absorption, and in this case it depends if it's the ceiling. So here we have above and below, and if it's a wall it is the right and left. And in terms of right and left, of course, depends on the input direction. So here we have the arrow. So this is the right side, this is the left side. In this case, the left side is on the outside of the enclosure. So here we can then define the left side, maybe it's reflective. On the inside, it's maybe some sort of absorption on the inside. All right. So let me, so this is all I want to say in terms of the definition of enclosures. So let me delete this. I'll hit the delete button. And so now let's talk about some other organization features. So here, if I right click on this, we can show objects of all variants. We can show objects with the current variant. So in this case, if I select that and I select the default, all the enclosures disappear in this list, so it only shows the variant 0. If I go to variant 1, it shows again everything. If I right click and so show all objects, all variants, then we see again the variants 1 grayed out the objects that are only in variant 1, although we're looking at variant 0. So here we can see what other objects we have, and they may be assigned to a different variant. All right. Another option here is we can move up and down objects in the list. So if you don't like a certain like sequence of objects, like here this control room desk, we can move down by holding the control button and the page down. So it moves it just by one element down. If I want to have it after the cabinets, I can go down 3 more times. And then here we have everything that's related to the control room. And here we have the machine room with some openings. So if I click on the machine room wall, we can take a look at these openings that are in this wall. Right now, these are defined as openings, so there is no absorption. So any particles that hit these openings, they fly through them. If the particle hits the wall, then of course there we have other definitions for that wall in terms of reflectivity or the foam. There's no transmission defined at this point, so it's, I guess, a very high transmission loss. All right. If I had, for example, these 3 electric motors, and I'd like to let's see, and then we have 3 pumps. If I want to get them all organized, again, we can control page up, and we can move them up in that list. All right. Actually, let's look at the variant, and I'll move the variants down. Variant 1. All right. Okay. Now, if you'd like to group certain objects that are currently single objects, like these 4 pumps here, we can create, add a new object group, and we can add them to an existing group, right? or we can just say, if we have nothing selected, actually we can select all 4 of them, and we can create a group object, and then we can say, okay, this is sources in big enclosure. All right, so now we have that a little bit organized. So we have the sources in the machine room over here, and then we have sources in the big enclosure right here. Organization, I think it's very important as you may make a more complex model. Now in terms of adding absorption on walls, let's say if I wanted to add a absorption on the roof, we can select the roof, and we can add absorptive material on the roof. So here we are looking at the roof. Yeah, so this is basically from the earth up, looking at the building. So here, this is the top part of the roof, and so we could create, for example, another variant. So this is variant 2, it's based on variant 1, and this is with absorptive ceiling options. Absorptive ceiling 50%. All right, and then we could, for example, put in maybe on the outside some sort of absorption here. Yep, that comes right to this point, and so this would be an absorption, and we could define it with some sort of acoustic tile treatment, and absorptive treatment, ceiling. All right, okay. And if you wanted to do that for other walls, we can again do that too. So in this case, we have this wall here. We can take a look. So this is on the, let's see, on the inside. We can flip it. Now it's basically from the side of the main room. And then we could add also some additional materials here on this side here, maybe somewhere right here. And we can just go with some acoustic absorption here. All right, so what we could do is we can select that, and we want one, and do maybe a 5 meter shift, move it over to this side, and we have 2 absorptive treatments, and we can assign that to this variant number 2. All right, wall treatment 1, two. All right, so that kind of covers everything in terms of the indoor calculation or the setup in the editor. Maybe just to complete the editing functions, there's of course also remove object group. We can dissolve a grouping, and we can add objects that are highlighted to an existing group. And then we can also see if we have any objects that are not assigned to any groups. All right, so let me save this this room here. I click on the right corner, on the bottom right corner, on the check mark. So that would be closing the editor. If you want to save your geometry or your input in between and not necessarily close your model, You can also do a Control S as a hotkey, and that will also save the model. Now here a few other things before I close it. There's a pre-flight. So this pre-flight is good to double check if you have any problems in the model. So here I just initiated the pre-flight. Alright, so here's completed. So there's a few comments in terms of the directivity on some of the machinery. So I have these box machinery and assigned some power or sound intensity levels so that of course it would be better to model them as point sources. It's faster, and directivity is maybe less of an issue there. Overall, this looks all good. Means all these frequency spectrum absorption definitions are all current and nothing is missing. If there is anything missing, the program will let you know. Other thing here in terms of the editor, we have the property table up here, and here we can go through all the elements that are defined right now, and you can select absorption inside, outside, the transmission, and you can verify the definition that you have in terms of the transmission library, or you have any type of source definition. What is your source definition? All right. All right, there we have all the source definition. All right, so let me close this. Let me close this and save yes. Close this here. One last thing in terms of the calculation here in the calculation kernel. When we run the model, we would select which variant is run. So beside the grid calculation and the building, we select which variant is computed. And then in this case, because it's a grid map, we want to calculate it for the entire ground floor. All right, I don't want to go through this any further at this point. I had other videos on the interior parameters. So let me just go to the graphics to show the end results. So here we have the grid results. So here, this is the contour calculation for the two models. So here at the top, let me do that again. So here in the top, we see the noise levels throughout the building, fairly low, under 80 decibels in the control room, but levels of 95, 98 in this main area, and of course in the machine room there in the order of about 100. All right. Now by adding these enclosures here, we can reduce the overall noise level significantly. So we have levels in the 85 dB range, 85 to 90 dB range. There's definitely noise coming through these openings here. There's again these two openings and then the door. But yeah, it definitely contains, these enclosures can contain quite a bit of the noise. Of course, there could be more done. We can close up these openings to contain more of the noise in this machine room. And then of course we had these absorptive sealing and then the additional absorption materials. So there's definitely more mitigation measures that could be implemented. So let me show the whole thing in 3D view. So let me drag this in here. So here we have the two models at the top. Again, the building is basically done transparent. We can look into the room. I have some transparency factor for the walls here. So here we can see the different sources, machinery, and then down here we can see the enclosures, the doors in the enclosures. There's some openings here, and yeah, and basically the levels that are coming out of that. Let me open up this menu here very quick in the 3D view. All right, so here this is the 3D view. We can rotate the whole thing and take a look at from the different angles what's happening. So here we have the control room with a window, or like a glass window, some doors. So the levels there are definitely below 80 decibels. Here again, there's some noise leaking out, which could definitely be a benefit to close that door, and then possibly also closing these openings that we have here in that wall. All right, this concludes this video. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, and maybe to another video later. Thank you.